What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nursing Uncharted, the podcast that uncovers uncharted territories within your nursing practice. I'm Maggie Ricard, pronouns she, her. I'm a full-time medical ICU nurse and your host for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. It is truly an honor to be the host of this podcast. It's an honor to be the liaison between you and the guests, and by having these conversations that hopefully, will make you feel fulfilled in your practice, whatever that looks like. I am super excited to get into today's episode. Before we get started, we are going to TravCon. TravCon is the one and only travel nurse conference, and it's September 17th to 20th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. And AMN has a booth, and they're going to be giving away prizes the whole time. I'll be there. And I would love to meet you guys. So let's meet up. You can register at travcon.org to go. And if you're somebody who's like, who has money to go to conferences, by myself, TravCon also has scholarship opportunities that you can look into. So it doesn't hurt to just apply. It's going to be so fun. So I hope to see you there. So today we have been spending a lot of time in the last few weeks talking about the future of nursing, how to set future clinicians up by talking to a lot of nurse educators. We talked about nursing school education a lot, but what tangible tools do we have for our new grads once they get to our units? How are we helping them thrive so that they can excel and grow up to become skilled clinicians that we love working with, who are confident, and they contribute actively to our units? So today I am sitting down with Chuck Jankowski. He's an RN with 14 years of experience in a variety of different healthcare settings, including critical care, ED, trauma, and rapid response nursing. He's currently a nursing professional development instructor for his hospital system, and he developed the Unstoppable RN program to provide guidance, mentorship, and support to new grads as they make their transition from school to practice. So, Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. I think it's exciting to have a conversation that I know is going to make a strong impact for a lot of our listener base.
Well, I hope so. I have gotten a lot out of being a nurse, a lot out of my nursing career, and I hope to be able to help other people do the same.
Yeah, me too. I really feel, my life would be so completely different without nursing. And it's those first few years are really hard, and it's hard to get over that hump and become confident. And so, it's nice to give back to those new nurses that are trying to go through that, same period.
No, it definitely is. And, I attribute the successes I've had in my career and the great experiences I've had in my career to the fact that I had great mentorship, great preceptorship who started me out strong, and I was able to figure out where I wanted to go in nursing. And that's the great thing about this job, this career field, this profession. Can you think of any other career field where three people who graduate on the same day with the same degree come back at a 20-year reunion, and one of them works on a helicopter, one of them is in management, and one of them is a professor, and They all have the same degree.
They all took pharmacology together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very...
No, there's a big table in nursing, and there's a lot of seats at it, but we need to make sure people are getting that strong base under them, under their big careers at the beginning, so that they can take those seats if they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so many different ways you could end up in so many different places, but you just have to stick with it. You have to, it's hard in those first few years.
No, it is difficult. And I think it's become even more difficult in the last 3 years post-COVID, because we have a loss of seniority at the bedside in nursing.
Yeah.
A lot of nurses who were the preceptors, who were the leaders on units, they retired, they took on clinical roles, they switched careers. And that left a gap of mentorship and role modeling for new nurses to be able to build the strong foundations of their practice.
Right, yeah. And the people that stayed are pretty burned out. It's like you don't really have the gusto to teach probably like you used to. A lot of times, like you just want to, everybody's in different mental states when they walk in the door. And it just seems like the morale is so much lower at times on the unit. So it's hard to like, put that aside and give a new person everything you have.
There is a lot of burnout. There also, some people are just not teachers.
Yeah.
Some people don't necessarily want to take on a preceptee, take on a
Yeah.
student, not because they dislike them, but because they don't feel confident in their ability to transmit the information accurately or in an understandable way. Kind of I do what I do, and I don't really know how to tell people about it.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is a lot of times you've got a new grad nurse coming out and their preceptor has been there for 4 to 6 months. And
Mm.
that is a tough position to be in for everybody. It's tough for the preceptor to be teaching while you're still learning yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get started with your program? Like, did you see these types of, poor mentorships and like decided to create a program, or how did you get started with that?
So it's kind of a culmination of experiences. Prior to being a nurse, I was a New York City firefighter. And in that career field, we had a very much a culture of mentorship where the senior members, it was an expectation of them that they were going to work with the junior members when they got to the firehouse in
Mm.
developing them as firefighters, whether that was through formal education, like come here and let's do this, whether that was through cultural storytelling of we had a fire here and this is our challenges and this is how we overcame it, so if you see a situation that's the same, this is how you do it, or
Mm.
just through role modeling, because like I said before, not everybody is a natural teacher. It might just be, if you want to see what the right thing is to do, watch me and do what I do.
Yeah.
So coming from a background like that, I was very lucky in nursing that I transitioned into a great unit where we had very senior nurses and a real team attitude. And it was a very similar situation where I had a great senior preceptor. We still meet up and grab coffee every now and again,
That's
um,
awesome.
who taught me the right way to do things, not the fast way, not the easy way, but the right way.
Mm.
Um, and I appreciated her for doing that. So during the pandemic, I also work for the federal government and the National Disaster Medical System. We are a disaster response organization that goes and takes care of state, local, tribal, and territorial healthcare needs when disasters strike. And throughout COVID, we were providing augmentation to hospitals that were overwhelmed either by patient load or by staffing crises. And we were setting up crisis ICUs. We were manning units. We
Mm.
were setting up monoclonal antibody facilities. We were setting up ED tents, triage tents for EDs. We were really working in a lot of different scenarios. And what I
Yeah.
saw in doing that, going across the country, was a lot of places and a lot of scenarios where, due to the circumstances, nurses were thrown in over their heads.
Yeah.
Whether it was a new grad nurse who just came out of school, whether it was a nurse from a less acute area who was volunteered to step up to work in an ICU environment who was struggling, whether it was a nurse from like an outpatient clinic or surgical services who didn't want to get furloughed, who redeployed into a different role. And
Mm.
there were a lot of places where people were in over their heads in helping patients.
Mm.
Um, then when that kind of slowed down and returning to regularity and regular work, I started seeing that nurses were coming out having gone through virtual clinicals in nursing school where they didn't have the hands-on experiences that previous nurses had had,
Sure. Yeah.
and there weren't these senior nurses there to guide them, to mentor them, to precept them.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that I worked for a very forward-thinking institution, and they established a program that guides and mentors new grad nurses through, not just through their preceptorship and orientation, but throughout the first year of their practice
Yeah.
with both a fellowship as well as clinical mentorship.
Okay.
And that just doesn't exist in a lot of places. Like I said, I'm lucky
Yeah.
in this place that I do work. So I saw the opportunity to create a program for new grad nurses, for novice nurses, to teach some of the skills that I teach in that role. Because when I first started doing that role, I thought it was going to be clinical work. I thought it was going to be showing people how to do IVs, showing people how to manage drips, how to
Mm-hmm.
manage chest tubes, how to do trach care. And what I found was that it was really more about teaching the soft skills about how to manage a full patient load, how to deal with scenarios, how to prioritize, how to look at the monumental list of tasks in front of you and get them done. Those were the
Mm-hmm.
places where our new grads needed help, and those are the places where our new grads were burning out. It was never, it wasn't about the acuity of the work or the difficulty of the tasks. It
Yeah.
was about those soft organizational skills.
I feel like that's probably, we get so focused on the skill part, when you're doing like a, in skills day or what have you, like the textbook stuff is easy. It seems like, it's these like different skills that you end up acquiring as you go, that
Mm-hmm.
are probably, the harder things that, it's like a nurse coming from an outpatient facility going inpatient might still know how to put in a Foley, but the like prioritizing how to like, juggle a bunch of patients, that's something that they're not, used to.
Right. And those were things that you would have learned as a new grad by watching the senior nurses on your unit and seeing
Yeah.
how they did things, seeking their advice. So, to be able to take, to be able to help people take the science of nursing and develop their practice into the art of nursing it's a really great thing to be able to do and great to be able to see people, start to come and say, oh, you know what, work isn't that bad. My last 2 weeks have been great since I started organizing myself. Ever since, I started looking at how I prioritize things, I've been able to, I've been able to take my lunch every day. Ever since I started delegating my tasks more, I've been able to get out of here on time. Ever since I started charting on a more constant basis instead of sitting down and doing it at the end, I've been able to, go home and see my family at the end of the day instead of coming home 3 hours later.
Yeah. Right.
So those are great things to see.
Yeah. So is this program, is it something that you implemented within your health system, or is it a kind of like a contracted, like people can contact you for this like mentorship
No,
opportunity?
people can contact for the mentorship.
Okay.
It's based on principles and things I learned through doing the professional development instruction, but it is a program that I developed myself for continuing education credits.
That is awesome. So it's accessible to, our listener base, like any new grads that might be listening to this and, wanting to check it out. It's available. You don't have to, it's not a local thing. It's something that they can
No,
contact you.
yes, it's available. It's out there. If you guys would be good enough to put our socials in the show notes,
Oh,
that
absolutely.
people can reach out to us. We've got a website. We've got some exciting opportunities coming up for learning and for sharing the program.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It will be in the description below. I was thinking of some of the things as far as pitfalls that nurses can fall into and ways that we can kind of help those nurses. And I think it's important to like introspectively look at ourselves as the seasoned nurses that are currently on the unit. And as far like be aware of what we are teaching and like how available we are to our new grads as far as mentorship goes, because I feel like they are always passively learning and based on what we are doing. I was recently at a conference and this one nurse was talking to me about, she said something about, oh, these new nurses, they don't answer alarms, and I was thinking like, well, who are they learning from? I mean, do they, are you at the desk? Like not, we have learned how to prioritize some of those alarms. Like we have to, like, because of alarm fatigue, we're not going to go to every, we might not look at the monitor every single, we know which ones are important and which ones are not so important. We would burn out if we have to like actively, intentionally respond to every alarm. but the new nurses see that we are not responding to certain alarms. And so, but they don't have that same, like critical thinking process going on. So they just aren't responding. And I just thought that was a interesting, look at yourself before you try to, attack a new grad for like not doing something. I mean, they're learning from us.
No, and that's where that role modeling comes into play. The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And if the next generation of nurses, if you're not showing them being the example that they need, if you're not being the person that they need, being that helpful person, being that civil person in the on the unit, they're going to turn around and become just like that. Nursing is a team sport, and we have more work in a shift than one person can reasonably do. So we do need to lean on each other. We need to lean on everybody on the team to get that done. And if you create an environment of civility, of teamwork, of help, of knowledge sharing, that will pay itself back in droves.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely will. It just takes that extra work and empathy and compassion for that new group in order to, because if you just, do your 12 and come home, it's, you might be benefiting yourself in some ways if you need that, but also, it really does behoove you and your unit to like participate as a group, as a team, on your shifts.
And, like I said, that's where I was lucky coming into nursing, going into a unit where it was a real teamwork environment, where it wasn't your patient, my patient. Everybody was our patient. We all took care of everybody's patient. If I heard your alarm going off, I checked it out. If I heard your IV pumps going off, I checked it out, and vice versa. I think we're lucky in that we are coming into a time in nursing where there is increased awareness of incivility in the workplace, decreased tolerance of bullying in the workplace. So I think that is a great thing for new nurses coming in that maybe didn't exist for people in the past.
I see that too. I feel like, so I've been a nurse for 9 years, and I think early on in my career, I felt a little bullied from time to time, and I don't see that happening. I agree. I don't see that happening so much that I used to, and I don't know if that was a different unit or if that is truly like as a culture, we're kind of like shifting away from that. I don't know. Have you heard that from new grads that you've talked to that they feel more supported?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
A lot of the places I go to, the units I go to, the new nurses talk about how great their colleagues are, how great their charge nurses are, how great the senior nurses are in helping them. It's not an eye-rolly environment, and I think a lot of that has to do. There's a lot of talk on social media about incivility in the workplace, in healthcare, and I think that that's starting to filter down into the way people are acting and creating a safe learning environment for new grad nurses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to get into, and in your experience through your mentorship program and mentoring as in nursing professional development, what are some of the things that new grads have the most difficulty with in coming into the workforce? What are some of the pitfalls that they struggle with, that they fall into? So
I think the number one thing across the board is just in organization. Nursing is about chaos. Everything is chaos. Our patients are in a state of chaos. Their health is in a state of chaos. They may be, mentally in a state of chaos. Their family situation might be in a state of chaos. And what we're doing is we are abating and mitigating that chaos and giving them a safe place to rest, to heal, and to return to a normal state of health. But we need to do that for our own day as well, because our own day is chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah. From the minute you step on, probably even before you punch in, there's somebody looking to grab your attention and tell you something, ask you something, wanting you to do something.
You create a plan for the day, and it's completely out the window by 10 a.m.
But you know what? As long as you have a plan, you can always change your plan. If you don't have a plan, you're just riding that chaos wave, whichever way it pushes you.
Yeah, that is very true.
So, one of the first things I tell new grads is take 10 minutes at the start of your shift. Make yourself a little chart, and I have one that I hand out, and just go through an hour by hour, patient by patient list of all the things you have to do at the beginning of your shift. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a book. You don't have to write out. Just, write down
Right.
meds, labs, write down the meds you have to give, write down the labs you have to do, write down any sort of timed assessments that you need to do. If somebody's on Q2 or Q4 hour neuro checks, if somebody's on heparin drip and they have Q1 hour blood sugar checks,
Mm-hmm.
write those down. Um, Wound care, if you could even go so far as to write down your Q2 hour turns. And what you're doing is you're making a plan where you're taking charge of your day and you're saying, this is what I'm going to do today.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is you start to look at that, and it turns the idea of your day and your time and your shift, it turns it into an actual picture that you
Yeah.
can look at. And now you've got a map of what your day looks like. And now you can look and say, well, you know what? I got this medication's due at 9, this medication's due at 11. Well, I'm going to split the difference and give them both at 10 and cross two things off my list at once. Now I've made a little space for myself. Or
Mm-hmm.
I've got 4 patients and every one of them needs a blood sugar check at noon. So I'm going to grab 2. I'm going to ask my tech to do 2, and I'm going to cross all those off my list at once. And you start making some white space in that map of chaos,
Mm-hmm.
in the day of chaos. Start making some space for yourself, and that space becomes time that you can sit down and do the things that hold you up throughout the day. Those are times when you can sit down and do maybe the wound care that is going to take you 30 to 45 minutes. You can sit
Mm-hmm.
down and do your charting. You can maybe sit down and eat lunch and drink water like a normal human being. But it's about taking charge of your situation and deciding when you're going to do things, when you're going to do your tasks, instead of having your tasks pop up and tell you that they need to be done now.
Yeah, I still do that. When I have a really complicated ICU patient, when I have just one, I will write them out hour by hour from
No, I
1900 to 7.
absolutely. That's where I learned how to do it. I realized in working in a trauma ICU that I was not quite swimming. I wasn't drowning, but I wasn't swimming,
Yeah,
and that I needed to figure out a way to get my head out of the water.
yeah,
And that's how I did it. Was I just made a little chart for myself. I actually still use the original chart that I made in 2011, 2012.
yeah. When you have a system that works for you, and I think there are some medical records that try to put that in their medical
Yeah.
record. That
Hmm.
they're, and I've never been like Epic uses the brain,
The
like
brain.
you can, but it looks like so messy to me. Like there's just like a bunch of icons and things, and I can't visually see everything on one page of like what I need to get done. So I still write it down. I think it's
And here's the other
easier.
thing. If you're having a day, if you're, running yourself ragged and you're not near a computer and I see you going crazy, like, hey, Maggie, what can I do to help you? And you're not in front of the brain and you can't look at it, you're going to look at me, I don't know, I got it. But
Yeah.
if you've got that list, you pull it out of your pocket, you'd be like, yeah, actually, you can help me. Can you go give meds over in room 12 and do a quick neuro assessment in room 13 while I take care of this in 14?
Yeah.
The other thing it does, because it also becomes a tool to help you to delegate.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about delegation a lot in nursing school, but nobody really ever tells you how to delegate, and it becomes weird.
Yeah.
If you're a new grad nurse coming onto a unit and you just got out of school and there's a clin tech who's been there for 12 years, and you might feel weird and uncomfortable telling people what to do who have more seniority than you.
Mm-hmm.
There might be people who have age differences where you're, fresh out of, I call them the OG nurses, fresh out of high school, right to nursing school and coming out, and your clin tech is, 10, 12, 15 years older than you. It might feel awkward to do that. And it's about developing, delegation is about developing leadership skills and creating an environment where we're not telling anybody what to do, but
Yes.
we're creating group goals, and we're asking people to help us to accept our goals as their own and help us to achieve them. But having that list is going to be able to help you pull that out of your pocket. When you have a rapid response, you can pull out of your pocket and say, hey, Chuck, guess what? I'm going to be in this room for 45 minutes. I got Vank that's got to get hung in 30 minutes in room 12. Can you go do that? Run to your clinic and you can say, hey, listen, I've got a new patient who just came up from the ED. I'm going to be booked down here with this rapid response. Can you go and set up the telemetry on them and grab a set of vitals for me?
Yeah.
And it's a reference, and it allows you to look at it and see if that the things that need to get done.
Yeah, I still struggle with delegation. I think that I'm somebody that thinks that they can do everything by themselves, and it doesn't serve me, and like you have to be able to, have a conversation with somebody and let them know what is going on that's catching you up, instead of just being like, can you go do this? You might be trying to collect your thoughts at a computer and it might not look like you're doing anything. And so, having that conversation like, hey, I have to just I just have to chart this thing real quick and then I have to run into this other room. I have to get a sugar and a temperature in this other room. Would you be able to do that for me?
And, that's where it becomes a goal-oriented, a transformational leadership-oriented type of thing with delegation. There are going to be certain things that only you can do as an RN. There are going to be certain things, and there are going to be certain things that come across your desk. And because the RN role, the nurse role, is kind of like the ringleader at the circus. Everything goes through you.
Yeah.
But the ringleader also has acrobats, a lion tamer, the elephants that they can call on to entertain the crowd. The ringleader doesn't have to do everything on their own. They can call in the appropriate people when it's the appropriate time. And some of that stuff gets done already for you. Think about it. If Epic pops up and it comes across and says stat chest x-ray for your patient, you still have to acknowledge that order, but you don't take the x-ray. That's delegated for you by the state. The state tells you that you don't have the license to take an x-ray. So that's automatically delegated for you. So you have to go and look and assess those lists of tasks and ask yourself, what do I have to do? What can only I do? I can, what needs to be done by me and my licensure, and what can I get other people to do? And then it comes to communicating that. When you communicate that to your peers, to other nurses, to clintechs, to medical assistants, they call them different titles in different places, to your charge nurse, even allied health professions. If you have someone coming in doing physical therapy, you can always ask them like, hey, when you get done, can you put them up in the chair for me?
Yeah.
And that's a delegation. But letting them know of something like, hey, listen, Maggie, you're my tech today. I've got to go and I've got to do 2 neuro assessments and I got to hang antibiotics. It's on a time frame. While I'm doing that, can you run over and can you grab blood sugars and can you do vital signs on all these other patients?
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is I'm setting up a scenario. I'm setting up a relationship where I'm not telling you to do something. I'm asking you to do something. I'm giving you a reason why I can't do it. And I'm letting you see how it's going to help everything in the bigger picture. So I'm convincing you. I'm not just ordering you to do it and you're saying, well, I guess I'll do it. It's my job. That's what I get paid to do here. I'm bringing you into the team. I'm bringing you into the goals, and we're all working together to get it done.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I remember when I was in acute care, in the beginning of the shift, I would say, hey, so-and-so, can we talk about our patients? And so you would just just give them a quick, like, hey, their Q4 vitals, their ACHS blood sugar, they are a 1 assist to the bathroom. This is what's going on with them. Like, give them a little snippet, about like they might be going home today. And, just so they're aware, because they have, you don't know the kind of report that they get from, their offcoming techs too. It could be completely different. Person might not have been ACHS blood sugars the shift before. So it's nice to just, then they are aware, it's on their radar also what, is going to be a shared responsibility for the shift. But I think it is very important to not assume that they're going to, do that. Like it's important to, have that conversation before and just ask if they can get it done, if you're
absolutely. And the other thing that's important is to close the loop on the communication. Delegation is great, but delegation doesn't get done until you, as the ringleader of the circus, till you know what the result is of the task. If you ask me and I'm your tech and say, hey, Chuck, can you go clean up? There's a patient in room 12 needs to be cleaned up. and I go and take care of it and just don't tell you about the fact that there was a pint of blood um, in the bed. That doesn't help anybody.
Hmm.
If you ask me, hey, can you go take a blood sugar on my guy in room 5? And I go do it, and I don't tell you that it's 36. That doesn't help
Mm.
anybody. So, we need to close the loop on that communication. Like, hey, can you go grab a blood sugar and just let me know what it is when you're done? Or take the impetus yourself and, hey, would you mind while I'm taking care of these, uh, whatever I'm doing in room 13, can you go and help clean up in room 11? And then just touching base again. How did it go in there? Everything okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Making sure that, because you still have to use your nursing skills, your assessment skills, and your judgment skills to determine if we need to take any nursing actions or if we need to notify anybody else on the team, the providers on the team.
Yeah. I might be jumping ahead, but in what advice do you give new grads if you get kind of like a pushback from, like, if they've tried to delegate before, or if they've tried that like closed loop communication, like, hey, what was the blood sugar? And they get a response like, well, it's in the chart, or like, or just something that might hinder them from, effectively working with that team member, in the future. Do you have advice for new grads on how to navigate that?
It's a tough one because every situation and personalities and unit cultures are different.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult to say, well, every time you should go and do this.
Yeah.
But I think the first way is, to try and do what we do with patients who are not cooperative, try to educate and explain
Mm,
why you're asking them to do this. Explain why, if you're refusing your medication, I'm going to explain why we want you to take your medication. If you're not helping and coming back with, giving the information I need, I'm going to explain why I need that information. And hopefully that will be that first step will be the thing that shakes it loose, and it'll help to understand. But that's also bringing people into the team. That's
yeah.
creating that leadership environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, again, with just, communicating like why like, hey, I'm not at a computer real quick. I just need, do you remember what that blood sugar was?
Mhm.
Instead of, obviously I can look in the chart, but I'm just doing, 5 other things. So I just need that, like making sure it's not 50.
And the other end of delegating is also to put yourself in a position that when you can, to be delegatable, to be there for your other coworkers, to be
Yeah.
there to help with cleanups, with med administration, help your colleagues when they have a rapid response, to keep an eye on the unit when there's a big event that's requiring everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Being that person is how it's the exchange, it's the trade-off, the transaction for the help that you get.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily going to be able to do that right off the bat
Yeah.
as a new nurse. But as you start getting better, as you start getting more comfortable, as you start getting that white space in the chaos of your day, you have to allow yourself to help your colleagues and to they say be the change that you want to see, be the help that you want to receive.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think from a PCA perspective or like a tech perspective, I think one of the biggest qualms between PCAs and RNs sometimes is that they have, in acute care, they have like 10 to 15 or more patients, and like they might see the nurses at the desk, not doing anything or talking amongst themselves. And there's all this extra labor that the PCAs are required to do. And so being able to, that exchange that you're talking about, being like, hey, can I help you with anything? I feel like that doesn't happen as much, and like as a new grad, I think that would really, solidify your relationships with people if you like actively seek out that exchange.
No, and the other thing is, every exchange that you seek out, everything that you help somebody with, every new procedure that you've never seen before that you ask if someone needs help with, that's a learning opportunity for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about delegation. We talked about organization. What are some other, pitfalls that nurses fall into or what things do you normally highlight in your mentorship?
So, one of the things it's one of the first things that people get better at is the concept of care clustering. Those first couple of weeks off of orientation when you don't have a preceptor there to guide you or to carry stuff. There's a lot of ping ponging in and out of the room and going in, doing one thing, leaving, coming back, doing another thing and
Yes.
leaving.
Oh,
But that
I
comes down
remember
to the
that well.
organization. And, I made a decision in nursing that I was not going to leave a room without doing at least one additional thing from what I walked in there for. Whether that was, something that was, required or not, I would do it, whether it was taking the garbage out, organizing some supplies, bringing some other supplies in that we needed to stock up in the room. I just made that decision that I wasn't going to be a unitasker when I walked into a room. I was going to make sure that I got a number of things done when I go in there. I think one of the other big pitfalls is charting. Charting is a time-consuming aspect of patient care.
Yes.
It is a enigmatic aspect of patient care. It's a scary aspect of patient care. It can be a redundant aspect of patient care, and it really does eat up a lot of time and energy in the nursing day. One of the things that I always tell the new grads is to chart as much as you can as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to do everything. But if you're doing your assessment and you do notice some things that are out of the ordinary, at the very least, chart that while you're in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can
that's
fill
really
in
nice.
the within normal limits stuff when we have a free moment. But if we put in the stuff that we notice, that if we notice a new adventitious lung sounds, if we notice some new changes, in circulation, we notice some weaker pulses, pedal pulses in somebody. Put that in, get that information in there, because it puts it out there for everybody in the team to see, because when you make a call, the first thing that whoever picks up the phone is going to do is look at the chart. So it'll give them that information. And the other thing is it will reduce the chances that you'll forget about putting it in later.
Yeah. Very true.
And then the third benefit is once it's in, and it's not something that you have to do later on in the day.
I try and prioritize I's and O's too, because a lot of times I think the docs arguably they don't look at our assessments unless there's something that they are looking for, but they do look at I's and O's. If you have somebody coming in with like pulmonary edema and you need to diurese them, like they're gonna use what we put in order to, propel patient care. They're going to figure out how much Lasix we're going to give the patient. So like I's and O's, I always say, try to stay on top of those.
As a critical care nurse at heart, it always freaked me out when I started working in ED when we're not charting exactly how much urine.
That's true. It's probably specific to different units, I would say. There's I's and O's are Q8 on the acute care side, but in critical care,
but working the rapid response role, if we come to somebody who's hypotensive, and we start looking through the chart, we're looking to see, well, are they making adequate urine? Have their pressures been low for a while and we haven't noticed it? And if nobody's charted anything, does it mean that they've not made any urine for the last 8 hours, or that we just haven't charted that they made any? Even if we just put in, unmeasured occurrence, it at least lets us know that something's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of I's and O's.
Yeah. I want to work through some scenarios that we might, come through on our day to day that a new grad may have difficulty with. And we've just gone over just general what we want the scenarios to be, but we haven't actually delved into actually what's going to happen. So, what are some scenarios that we can talk about, and then I want to just talk about some of the tools and strategies that we can come to overcome each scenario.
So, one of the things that everybody is nervous about is when they get to their first unit, something that everybody freaks out about and thinks that they do a terrible job at, even if they didn't, is going to be handling an unstable patient.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when in the middle of your shift, your patient who previously was, up and talking to you and smiling and happy and everything was copacetic? What do you do when all of a sudden now everything is not copacetic and they're not responding to you, or
Mm.
they're having difficulty breathing, or their blood pressure is low? Um, and those are things people freak out about. Is what do I do when that happens?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Do you remember your first rapid response?
I remember I don't know if I remember my first rapid response. I do remember on the floor. It's a lot more jarring, I think, to have an unstable patient in acute care than it is in critical care, because
Hmm.
in critical care, first of all, you only have one or two, and everybody, as a new grad, a lot of times you are the least skilled person among a bunch of other very
Hmm.
skilled people that can help you with the patient. But in acute care, they're not monitored a lot. They might not be on telemetry. You might not have assessed their vitals in 4 hours. So you don't know when
Hmm.
this
And you
started.
don't have the attending physician. He's the hospitalist. He's seeing everybody.
Right.
So he's not, right there like they
They're
are in ICU.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sometimes it can be, more so intimidating in acute care. I remember, I did the tech had done 6 a.m. vitals, and the patient's oxygen was like in the 70s. And I think they ended up being transferred to the ICU. And I think it's just kind of figuring out what happened, and there was just kind of like a chaotic environment. All of a sudden they were confused, they weren't, you know so eventually, I mean, you notify your charge nurse, you get people involved so that you're not the only person in the room dealing with that
That's the thing is,
situation.
first thing is get the help going, get the
Yeah.
help moving.
Yeah.
Charge nurse, rapid response team, reach out to the providers, whatever your hospital does in those situations, whatever your unit protocols are in those situations. It is always better to ask for help and not need it
Mm-hmm.
than to sit there and maybe I can do this myself, maybe I can and allow things to get worse.
Right.
When I did rapid response, I've done it at a couple different institutions. I always said I would rather come here and it's nothing, and we all walk away and change an O2 probe, and we all walk away, and everybody's happy. Then come in and realize that we have to code somebody because we were a little bit behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
So the step one, regardless of what's going on, is make sure you get that help going. And what I do tell new grads is when you see something, if it doesn't seem right, if something doesn't feel right,
Mm-hmm.
it is worth investigating and escalating.
Yes.
Even if it turns out that it's not an emergency, it is always worth it. And the reason why, as nurses, we are trained to assess humans,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a very good idea of what a healthy human looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to know our patients while they're there, and who maybe they're not healthy people, but we get a very good idea of what they look like at their norm. So when we walk in, we might see something and we can't quite put our finger on it, but something's off and something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell them, when you get that feeling, it is always worth looking into, assessing, investigating, escalating.
Yeah. Absolutely. I used to work on a neuro acute care, and so they were very your Q4 hour neuro assessments were really important because small changes
Hmm.
in neuro assessments could mean big things happening in the brain. And so, I was always, those poor neuro residents in the middle of the night, you're just like, hey, I think this is a neuro change. I think that they're not pronating their forearm as much as they used to
Hmm.
be. If they had like a back surgery postoperatively, you're like worried about a hematoma or something. The wheels are turning. Like, maybe
Hmm.
is this a stroke, or are they just tired in the middle of the night? You just have to rope people in, because that one time that you just think, oh, it's probably nothing. Like, it might end up being something.
My first in hospital emergency. I was working in the ICU, and I was very fresh off of orientation, so they had me with the some less acute patients, and this woman was giving me a hard time all day, just everything, fighting me on everything, giving me a mouthful of lip for everything,
Yeah.
and we were looking to get her out of bed and into the chair, and all of a sudden I said, "Let's go to the chair," and she wasn't talking to me.
Oh no.
And she looked fine. Everything looked okay. And she just wasn't saying anything. And I was like, there's no way that she just like stopped and started like being nice.
Yeah, right. We know that
There's no way. And I remember going to the charge nurse, and for years she laughed about it. I said, I'm not sure if my patient's not talking to me or if she's having a stroke.
Yeah.
And she went in there. We did an assessment together, and it turns out she was having a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
So when something changes, when something doesn't seem right, when something's different than it was before, it's worth escalating, investigating, assessing.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, and honestly, that moment where you're like, I was right, and it turns into this, a whole situation, like, after the fact, when you're debriefing about it, you're like, that was me. I caught that. It's so.
No, and those are those boosts and stuff that make you want to come back the next day, and I am getting this. I can do this.
Yeah. But you just have to rope other people in. I rope charge nurse in all the time. If there's something, that's not right that I want to bounce ideas off of, I just, you just want to talk about it. You just talk about your patients to other people, don't keep it all to yourself.
No, and a lot of nursing is pattern recognition. And when you're a new nurse, a novice nurse, you're learning those patterns. But having those discussions, you may have a nurse who's seen those patterns before, and they can tell you, oh no, and this, when you start seeing this, and this, that means that X, Y, and Z is going to happen, or you should do A, B, and C.
Yeah. Let's go to another one. Let's go to a second scenario.
Sure.
So you have a demanding family member. You have somebody that is, they have no idea, and it seems like they don't care about the rest of your day or what you have going on. They want you in your patient's room, at all times. It seems like, they're just constantly calling out, or, they just want you in the room. Like, how does a new grad navigate that?
I think the first thing is to say that, for the sake of our conversation, demanding is not an excusal for inappropriate behavior, violence, threats of violence, inappropriate language, inappropriate sexual or racial behavior. That is not tolerated and shouldn't be humored or worked through. That's something that needs to be escalated and dealt with. I think it's a big problem in healthcare. I think it's a big cause of nurse burnout, and it's something that more and more facilities are taking a no tolerance approach to. So I don't want this conversation to make it seem like I'm being excusatory of ill behavior.
Yeah.
But for the demanding family member, it really starts with you, and it starts earlier than the day. It starts in terms of, establishing what your values are and what kind of nurse you are and what kind of nurse you want to be. And the reason why is because we need to separate our practice from our job, and you need to determine what kind of nurse do you want to be? What attributes do you want to bring to your day? And that's gonna help you decide a lot of things. It's gonna help you decide how you structure yourself, how you structure your day. It's gonna help you decide where you want to work. If one of my values is that I want to, I want to help sick kids, then that's going to be where I want to aim my career. It's not going to benefit me to work, in adult care. But establishing those values of what kind of nurse you want to be. I want to be a safe nurse. I want to be a nurse who every day that I come in, when I leave, my patients are better than they were when I walked in the door. I'm a nurse who values communication and making connection with my patients and interacting with them. I'm a nurse who values doing everything very correctly and doing everything, not taking shortcuts in what I do. Those are all value statements that you need
Mm.
to establish for yourself. And what it helps you do is it helps you then establish boundaries as to what are acceptable things that you are going to tolerate, acceptable things that you're going to do in your practice, in your work. So, somebody who works in a less acute area may be more tolerant of some demands because they don't have the pressing pull from acute patients, from other patients that you do in a critical care environment. Someone who works in critical care may value and put boundaries around. I can't go and address this. I'm going to have to get somebody else to do it because I have a more critical patient. But having those boundaries, having those values are going to help you to figure out how you're going to deal with this person and how you're going to address them. And I think,
Hmm.
we do have to be cognizant of the fact that, healthcare is very much based around the satisfaction scores, and that is what
Yeah.
institutions are looking for, and people know that.
Hmm.
So people are going to maybe take advantage of that and look at this in a means that they can have some leverage in how they get treated. But I think that the main way to do it is to pause and take a breath when things are getting heated, if things are getting stressful, if things are getting overwhelming. Pause and take a breath.
Hmm.
Put some space between you and the person. And I'm not saying they're being, inappropriate. Put a little space between them so that you have space to think and breathe. Even if that means just taking a couple steps backwards to make a little physical space, that means taking some mental space, taking a deep breath, exhaling. If that means leaving the room for a minute and walking out and sitting down and collecting yourself, put a little space between you and what's going on.
Hmm.
And then when you readdress it, come at it from that communicative point of view, explain what you're capable of doing, explain what your plans are to do, and give them the boundaries that you have so that they can manage their expectations of your care for the shift.
Hmm.
If somebody wants you and says, you need to be in here every hour, you need to be in here for at least 30 minutes of every hour. You need to tell them that's not a reasonable expectation. And I or somebody else will check on what's going on in here every hour. But being in here for that long is not reasonable. And I have a responsibility to all of my patients, not just to your mom. And I can't, or your dad or whoever it is. I can't just put those aside for, to do that. And a lot of times people do get that once you explain what's going on.
Hmm.
Um, when people don't, you have to kind of figure out your workarounds. I had this one patient, and the the son was like, my mother, her every time I look at it, her cup of ice better be full.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Oh, wow.
You know what the easiest way to deal with it was? Just bring a cup of ice with me every time I walk in the room and
Yeah.
dump it in. And you know what? Pick the fight. It's got
Mm.
to be small enough to win and big enough to be important. And very few fights actually are. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and if worst comes to worst, then it's lean on your team, lean on your charge nurse, lean on your peers to, hey, can you go in there? I need a break
Hmm.
from this for a few minutes. Can you go in there, and you give these meds?
Yeah.
Um,
I think that
you
even
know,
a lot of it could be dissipated, though. I think by addressing what your values are. I think I've never thought of that. I think innately I'm somebody that tries to avoid conflict. And so, trying to address a demanding family member is very intimidating, or was definitely intimidating as a new grad. I think I would just try to do it all and cater to them and do everything else. And I ended up being very burned out as a new grad, and I ended up having to travel and get like a different perspective and stuff. But I mean, I love that. I love that advice of just giving them a little bit of insight and like, this is what my values as a nurse is to be, compassionate and provide empathy and give everybody time my time equally, and so that's just because I have 4 to 5 patients. This is what I can offer you. And when I'm in here, I'm present, but I have to equally provide that to all of my patients. I think if I had known that if I had the confidence to say that to some of my patients, maybe I would have stayed in acute care a little bit longer. But I think it really, it weighs on you when you have such demanding, family members, and you feel like you're kind of the scapegoat for people's problems a lot of the time too.
And that scapegoating is what happens. And, the people say things that are unkind. People say things that are passive aggressively unkind or
Right.
passive aggressively trying to influence your behavior. And I think one of those things you have to do is think to yourself, is what they're saying, if they say something that is, shocking, hurtful, or mildly offensive, is that a fact or is it an opinion?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people say things like, well, a good nurse would be in here all the time and making sure my mother never has, her cup is never empty of ice. A good nurse would do that.
Yeah.
That's a passive aggressive swipe at you, saying,
Mm-hmm.
well, oh, I'm a bad nurse if I do this.
Yeah.
And it comes down to, is that a fact or an opinion? No, that's an opinion. A fact is that a good nurse takes care of all of their patients. A good nurse prioritizes their actions based on their patient needs. A good nurse recognizes that time is the most scarce resource that we have and gives it to the patients who need it the most.
Yeah.
But knowing that inside yourself, you have to cement that inside yourself by establishing your values before you can project that out in your practice and your interactions with other people.
Mm-hmm. I think I got some advice from somebody a couple years ago, and I hope I can recollect what it is because I thought it was great advice. And in regards to talking to somebody that's berating you, if it's like a family member or a patient, or, they just say something insulting, this advice was listen very, very carefully to exactly what they are saying, because you are going to flip it back on them and say, you are saying that I am lazy. That's what you said. Is that what you meant? And then, if that's truly what they said, they may kind of be embarrassed that they said that because, in the heat of the moment, maybe they just are, regurgitating something that they're not actually thinking and their emotions are there. So they may kind of backtrack and you say, oh no, like I want to fix this. I believe that we can, but this is, so you kind of, put it back on them. If somebody is truly being, unprofessional and trying to, say something that's demoralizing or, really affecting you, don't take that from somebody. Like, it's not part of our jobs to be scapegoats. It's not part of our job to have to, take on other people's, anger. It's a high stress environment for everyone, family members, patients, but that doesn't mean that we have to be that person that's projected that stuff on. So, that was just a little piece of information that I was like, oh, I have to put that in my mind and use it someday.
No, that's a good tip, and one of the things when you're new at this, when you're new at anything, any criticism, really cuts you to the bone.
Yeah.
Because you're nervous yourself about how you're doing. You're unsure of yourself. So somebody, even if it's somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, telling you that you're lazy, that you're not a good nurse is going to affect you. I mean, think about it this way. What if I said, Maggie, you know what? Your clown makeup that you're wearing is horrible. The white face, the red hair, the red nose, it's insane. It's ridiculous. And I hate it. And I don't like you. See, you're laughing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because you're not wearing clown makeup. It means nothing. If somebody told me I hate your purple hair,
Yeah.
I'd love to have purple hair. It means nothing because I know it's not true.
Yeah.
And we can easily depersonalize those words. But when it's something that we just went to school for 4 years, we just studied and took a test, we just went through preceptorship, we're nervous about doing the right thing, that makes it easy to personalize those things. So it's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter, you have to separate yourself and realize, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. I am a good nurse. One of the things I also tell the new grads is every time you get um, a note from a patient, every time you get they give those little email awards like
Yeah.
you were a
Mm-hmm.
good helper,
Yeah.
you did a
Like
good
a warm
job.
fuzzy.
Somebody sent a compliment. Yeah, people get the Daisy nominations.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell them, save that,
Yeah.
print that out. If it's an email, if it's a note, put it in your an envelope and put it in your work bag. And when you are feeling unsure about yourself, if someone does say something to you that you think is untrue, but it still hits you as you take it personal, look at those and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that you are doing a good job.
Yeah.
Um, it's very easy. If you interact with 10 people, nine of them tell you did great, and one of them tells you do horrible, we all as humans are just going to focus on that 10th person.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, that is 1/10 of the feedback we're getting. 90% of what we're doing is great.
Yeah. That's such good advice. Yeah. Like, litter your locker with those things, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's,
It's funny. I used to keep them in a pocket of my backpack, and my wife found them one day. And she goes, "People say really nice things about you."
like,
And I was
yeah.
like, "Why are you so surprised?
Yeah. Right. Like, I am a good nurse.
Why does that surprise you so
Yeah.
much?"
I have that actually. When I was traveling, I had this big binder of like my like certifications and like health physicals. Like, I had like paper. I had like all my paper documents as a travel nurse, but in the back of it, I had like that extra stuff because like it's nice to look at every now and then, and like save it, put it somewhere.
Hmm.
All right, let's go through our last scenario that we have curated. So this next one, we have a sick admission, and that's close to change of shift, or something that
And
you get somebody at 6:15 on the unit, and how do you navigate that?
so what's interesting was I actually got to learn about how transfers actually work within a hospital, in a big hospital, and how I had a friend who took a house supervisor position and was explaining it to me, and actually shed a lot of light as to why these things always seem to happen at the change of shifts.
Mm.
And it has a lot to do with when rounding occurs, when um, when doctors put their notes in, when doctors sit down and put their orders in, when
Mm.
the environmental services clean the rooms, when people get discharged, and it just kind of happens around between 4:30 and 7 is when all
Interesting.
those things come together, all those different pieces. I actually learned a lot from her when she took that position. But I think one of the things that we have to think about is when a patient comes up and it is within a reasonable, very close to the change of shift. Um, Nursing is a 24-hour job.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that patient came on your shift, while you cannot just shrug your shoulders and say the next shift will take care of it, you don't have to stay until 9 o'clock to complete that admission.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things to realize is, you do what we do as nurses, which is assess. Give that patient an assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they're safe. Make sure they're appropriate for their unit. If they're not appropriate for your unit because of whatever medications they're on, or whether your unit doesn't take titratable drips and they are on a titratable drip, whether they have a condition that needs telemetry and you don't have telemetry, start that ball rolling for the next shift and start at least your physical assessment
Mm-hmm.
on your patient and get that into the computer and get that done, because that's what we do as nurses. We assess and we take action based on those assessments. So as long as we start doing that, we're golden.
Yeah.
Anything else that you do, anything extra you can get done, is a bonus. But at the end of the shift, you already have a lot of things stacked up that you have to do. You have to complete your notes. You have to, finish up your own, which is my personal theory on nursing is I start getting ready for change of shift at 4:30 p.m.
Yeah. That's nice.
Whether that is making sticky notes with my summary for the day for how I'm going to give my report, whether that's starting to take out garbage and linens from the room, starting to tidy up the room, whether that's, making sure I'm pushing all my medications, getting them done as early as I can. If there's anything that's towards the end of the shift, doing all my R's and O's, charting everything for the day, starting that process at 4:30 so that I'm not in a mad rush.
Yeah.
Between 6 and 7. But there are going to be things that stack up on you. Nursing is a job where the conveyor belt doesn't stop moving because you have to pause.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be stuff stacking up, and it's a point of remembering this is a 24-hour job, and you are a member of a team, and teams support each other. You don't just support the team; teams support each other. So if we share that workload of that assessment, and start the ball rolling on anything we find that's out of the norm. If we get the patient and we're doing an assessment and we hear crackles in their lungs, and we look in their chart and there's nothing about that coming in, we have to take some action. That's a problem. Making sure our patient is safe, making sure that we've got all of our fall precautions in on our patient, making sure also that the patient is who they're supposed to be, is make sure we've identified the patient, matched them with their band and their ID numbers.
Yeah.
We don't have to go and delve deep into the background of, how well do you do your ADLs and, how have you been eating over the last 2 weeks? Have you lost any weight unintentionally? We don't have to dig that deep into it. We have to make sure our patient is safe and make sure we've done a basic assessment on our patient's physical condition. And, doing even more focused assessment on whatever they're here for is even better on top of that.
Yeah.
But it is a 24-hour job. And, I think a lot of people will do it because they don't want, I don't want night shift to be mad at me. I don't want night shift to be mad that I didn't do it. But you know what? The way you pay them back is when they have an admission that comes at 6:45 in the morning, you give them exactly the same amount of tolerance and patience and grace that you would like to receive from them.
Yes.
Just the same way we talked about, the key to delegating is also being delegatable. The key to working a 24-hour job is accepting the work that is left over from the shift before yours as well.
Yes.
And that's not to say allowing somebody to not do their job, but recognizing that things occur at the change of shifts, and not giving people a hard time about the things they can't control.
Yeah, for sure. That is such great advice, because that's a good thing too. I think sometimes part of a toxic environment is when you're giving a report to somebody and they're like rolling their eyes because you didn't, complete X, Y, or Z. And, like you would think they would have this shared understanding, like not everything is going to get done when we want to get done. And, they have no idea what happened in the 12 hours that I just went through, and it was chaos and it was crazy. And, so I didn't get to bladder scan this person at the 6-hour mark that I was supposed to do that. Like, you just pass it off. And I think now as a seasoned nurse, I never, probe into like, well, why didn't you do this? A lot of like, I will figure it out, like I just let me know what needs to get done and I will get it done.
Right.
Because I want them to know that I'm a safe person to pass things off onto, because I know, things get crazy. And then when I didn't get everything done, I'm going to pass that on to you. And I don't feel bad about that at all. If it's
right. And, as long as you've got a good reason why you're doing it, not,
right.
because I was, making TikTok videos, or because the Starbucks kiosk opens up at 6 and I wanted to get a double shot, as long as you have a good reason, people are pretty understanding. About things, because it happens to everybody. It's the way that this job works. Yeah.
I just like randomly thought of like, yes, I'm very lax about what you can give me. I will get it done on my shift, except if your patient hasn't had a bowel movement in 3 days and you didn't do anything about it, then I get like, why didn't we do anything about this? I think it's coming from having a neurosurgical background and people with like opioid induced constipation. They were like very strict about like having bowel movements. Like after the 3rd day, like we got to get an enema in. I'm like, you have to.
Or even worse, his potassium is high. It's been high all day, and I just gave him the lactulose at 6:45.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to watch his EKG for the next.
But it was ordered at 3.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, with new grads, when I see, really late medication, sometimes I'm like, I know in my head, they were just having trouble prioritizing things, and
Mhm.
that piece wasn't there, and sometimes I will have, if I'm getting a report from a new nurse and I feel like there's a lot of pieces missing, or I'm having trouble piecing together what's going on in the patient because like information is being fragmented. I struggle with finding a way to be that good feedback for them, I think. And like that's
Mhm.
something that I wanted to ask too. I mean, as seasoned nurses, I mean, how can we best support new grads? Is there a more constructive way to like provide that feedback, or I don't want to make new grads feel like they screwed up and they look bad, but like it's something that you should address. It's medications shouldn't be hours late. Like how do you navigate that as a seasoned nurse?
I think it is about establishing, we talk a lot about establishing relationships, establishing environments, but establishing yourself as a person who a new grad can come up to and discuss their problem, can make a mistake in front of, can
Mm-hmm.
make an error in front of without being ridiculed, without having a overblown response to it. I think that is the first and primary way that you do this, make yourself that person.
Mm.
And then it is to just address it with like a kind of, hey, was everything okay today? I noticed that this, and this weren't given at the right time. Was everything all right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that way it gives that safe thing of like, no, everything was not okay.
Yeah. Like,
Um,
oh God, let me just dump. And it's normally at the end of the shift too. So it's like they don't have a lot of time, or you don't have a lot of time. So, but it is nice.
mhm.
I like that idea of just kind of opening that door. Like, was everything okay today? Like, how do you feel?
Mhm. And one of the things that's tough for a new grad nurse is you're coming out of the school environment where your only interaction in the hospital has been your clinical work, which is very variable. It's
Yeah.
only a couple days a week. It's for 8 hours on those, 2 days a week. And maybe you get a nurse who's really into teaching. Maybe you don't. Maybe you get somebody who doesn't want you doing anything. Maybe you don't have a wide variety of patients, a lot of different clinical experiences to see. But you're coming from an environment where you're dealing with a handful of patients on a 2 day a week basis, and you're really focusing on one of them and writing up a care plan,
Mm-hmm.
to an environment where you're fully responsible for between two if you're in critical care, up to 4 to 6 if you're in acute care, 6 people and every aspect of their care, and
Mm-hmm.
you're on your own. And I think that that's a tough transition for a lot of people to make, because nursing is that conveyor belt doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things I like to talk about is coming from nursing school. We talk about the nursing process, which is very, I think, aimed towards the academic and the theoretical. It's the assessment, diagnosis, planning.
Mm-hmm.
And what if we replace diagnosis with assessment and then prioritize? We assess our patient, and then instead of going to a nursing diagnosis, say, what is our number one priority with this patient?
Yeah.
What am I most concerned about? It's my neuro patient. I'm most concerned about making sure that they don't have any changes in neurostatus. It is a septic patient. I'm most concerned about making sure that they have an adequate map, and we're
Mm-hmm.
adequately maintaining circulation and perfusion. Do that for all your patients, and then do that for all your patients together. Assess your day. I have 5 patients. I have one patient who's going to be discharged tomorrow. I have another patient who just rolled in, who's soft on their blood pressure. My priority is going to be that patient who's soft. So it's assess, prioritize, APPI we'll call it. Assess, prioritize, plan, intervene, instead of assess, diagnose. And I think changing that model helps people, because people are used to that nursing
Yeah.
process, and just tweaking it a little bit, it makes it a little more applicable to practice.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I will probably use that as for my orientees. Because diagnosing, it does
Yeah,
seem like, it is kind of like an old, like care planny way of
yes, and
going about
at
your
the
day.
risk of of bearing the wrath of my friends who work in academia, when was the last time you ever said, well, this person has I can't even think one up off the top of my head, of a nursing diagnosis, and wrote that down or said it out loud outside of nursing school.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reason we talk about them, and there's a reason they exist, and there's a very good reason for it. But it's just something that we don't necessarily use all the time in the majority of nursing care. And there's places where it does exist, where those diagnoses do exist. But I like to kind of just tweak it a little bit and make it a little more applicable to real, not real life, but to practice, as opposed to the academic setting.
Yeah. I think care plans need a makeover. I think there is a space for them. I totally understand that, but I think that they're not making the mark. There's something about them. I think that's a whole other conversation we can have.
No, I think it would be a dissection of the healthcare system and how the various practices and specialties interact with each other in terms of patient care. I think that's a whole other show.
A whole other thing. I want to talk about the opportunity in November, before we close out the episode. There's you have a cruise opportunity that's happening in November, correct?
Yes. So we've been giving the Unstoppable RN program at some nursing schools and some seminar settings. But I was lucky enough, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Laura Gasparis.
I looked her up after we spoke the first time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She does a lot of nursing education, a lot of seminars. She's very big into the CCRN, CEN preparation world. And I was discussing with her while I was putting the program together about how to get it out there and expose people to it. And one of the things she said was, to keep it from just being a regional thing, to give it a wider spread, was to offer it as part of a travel opportunity. So what we've done is we put together an Unstoppable RN cruise. We'll be leaving in November 13th through 18th out of Miami. It's a 5-day cruise. It's going to stop in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, and Grand Cayman. And on the days that the ship is at sea, we're going to be delivering the Unstoppable RN programming. We're going to talk about the real world strategies, like we talked about here today, of how to really thrive and be a success in your first year of nursing. We're going to have some nurses from different specialties and backgrounds teaching as well, and we're going to have some casual and pocket sessions where new nurses can come and talk to nurses from different specialties about how they progressed in their careers, what steps they took in their careers, and advice that they have for new nurses to go into the specialties that they want to find themselves in.
That is awesome. That's going to be such a great resource. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great time. We've got all the amenities of the ship, plus educational content, plus we're giving 8 hours of continuing education credit on top of it. There is a lot going on the trip, so we're looking forward to seeing everybody there.
That's great. Well, Chuck, this was such a great conversation, and we went a little long, but it was totally worth it because I think we covered a lot of content, and
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this to come out because I think it was a really powerful, impactful conversation, and I hope new grads can, and even seasoned nurses. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this talk. So
no, I think it's great, and I love talking to nurses about their experiences, whether they're seasoned nurses talking about what they did or what they wish happened, or new nurses talking about what they need in their practice. Anyone can feel free to reach out to me. My email is unstoppablерn@gmail.com. So I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody who's listening who would like to talk more.
Awesome. And where can they find your website as well?
Our website is iconeducationservices.org.
Awesome. Great. Well,
and our Insta and Facebook will be in your show notes.
That's right. We will plug them below. Well, Chuck, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Maggie. The pleasure was mine.
That brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in to Nursing Uncharted. To learn more about today's episode, make sure to explore the show notes at americanmobile.com/nursinguncharted. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a guest. If you're a nurse interested in traveling, visit americanmobile.com to explore the largest database of travel nursing jobs in the industry and the amazing benefits that American Mobile has to offer. Also, a special thanks to producer Jonathan Carey, assistant producers Katie Schraubman and Sam McKay, and Aiden Dykes for the music and editing. Until next time, take care of yourself.